Okay, hello folks.
We was hacked. No, we weren't. We just buggered up the technology because John's been playing with new technology and wondering why we weren't getting any comments because he hadn't turned things on. So, hello.
Hello everyone. 7 people, Rob, watching. And let's have a look at where they are. So they're all on YouTube. So the extra effort and confusion of adding extra streams has done us wonders. There we go. Alan's joined the comments. So just to address the comments we've had so far, Alex said Happy New Year's. Happy New Year, buddy. Tasman's in here. G'day. Happy all New Year indeed. And Alan from the river to the sea, Yemeni condo market has some great deals going on. Look, we'll be.
No, we're not saying from the river to the sea. Guys.
We're not saying it. No. We're not that brave.
No, we are not. Anyway, hello, folks. Welcome to Totally Tank, the tankiest podcast in Tankville. It's January 13th, 2024, and this is episode 54. My name is Rob, and I'm joined by...
Hello, I'm John, and today we are talking about the Red Wave, the armoured fist of the Chinese menace, the Type 99. And I just want to be super clear that I am ironically aping the language of the warmongers. Of all the things to be afraid of in this world, the Chinese are well down the list, but there's a lot of very foolish people who get paid a lot of money to write articles in newspapers trying to make us all afraid.
And before we jump into the episode, I just want to dedicate this episode to my wonderful mother, Wendy, who recently passed away, who has always enjoyed finding articles in the paper about tanks and cutting them out for me to include in the podcast. Love you, Mum. Miss you.
And now, Rob, it's time to thank our patrons. So we have in our patrons, top level, the Artificer level, John Markel, Chris Peze, G-Hook, Pear, Maxi Mixed, and that's the top level patrons. And then the lower tier, we've got James O'Hagan, Jay Beckman Strauss, Anton Gorbanov, Jamie Stokes, Chris Doyle, Steve Matthews, Spencer Davis, Vikram Murthy, Fartmaster, Corey, Floaty Burb, Carter Heller, Scotch 12, Brian Jenkins, David Mulvaney, and Jimmy O. And thank you to one and done patron, The Walrus, who came on for a few days, gave us $10 and then downgraded. That's fine too. We don't mind a one-off payment. That's lovely.
Love your work, all of you. Love you, patrons.
Now, if you want an excellent Totally Tank t-shirt, guaranteed to start conversations with terrifying people, head over to redbubble.com, search for Totally Tanked. There are a few people pretending to be us, but just go with anything that's got our logo in it, or just the words Totally Tanked actually on the shirt, I guess. Now let's get onto the tank. Rob, it is time for you to count the rivets.
One rivet. Two rivet. No. Okay, so the Type 99, well, in fact, it started out as the Type 98. Was produced from 1998 to 2001, and before going to, as a prototype, before going to full production as the Type 99 from 2001 to 2011. In 2007 to present, the Type 99A was started being built. Online, there are listed 1,200 being built overall, 600 of the Type 99.
A lot of people believe that is...
we're getting to that.
Yeah, massively undersold number.
Yep. But, 600 of the Type 99 and 600 of the Type 99A. However, there are plenty of internet rumors that the numbers are far higher, from anywhere from 1,700 of total or up to 4,000. So, yes, we'll believe... Who knows what is actually happening out in the...
But unlike certain other tanks, this is a real production tank in being deployed to real units.
Weight to 54 tons for the Type 99 and 58 tons for the Type for the 99A. Length 7.6 meters long, 3.7 meters wide, 2.35 meters tall. So longer, wider, and taller than the T-72 is based on. So yes, it's got increased size and volume,
but with a massively more powerful engine as well. So,
official crew is 3: driver, gunner, and commander, as most T-72 setups were. Now the armor, we've got a welded turret with composite armor and a high reliance, and they have a very high reliance on ERA. Limited protection from the side, so an RPG can go through the side hull. So basically, it's a very forward-facing armored tank.
It's very hard to think of many that aren't these days.
Abrams, Challenger.
An extra 20 tons.
Exactly. But the point being is that it is a forward-facing armored hull. So the ERA is basically concentrated on the turret and the front hull, upper glasses and lower glasses. Main armament, a ZPT 98 Chinese built 125mm smoothbore. longer than the T-72, carrying.
So it's, I think, 2 extra calibers. Anyway, so it's a bit longer.
It's 50 caliber.
Yeah.
Of 50, L50 or whatever you want to say.
For the just for folks who haven't been following tank stuff as long as others, a caliber in a tank gun is the length of the bore of the gun, and for reasons that make sense to cannon makers, it's very important to measure out your gun in calibers.
There you go. It carries 42 rounds, 22 in the autoloader. Also carries 4 ATGMs, anti-tank guided missiles.
And I just want to note, this is Chinese with Chinese manufacturing behind it. Russians, you're very rare you're ever going to encounter a Russian tank that's actually got the guided missiles loaded in. China, I wouldn't want to bet against it.
No. Secondary armament, we've got the 7.62 coax and a 12.7 millimeter external mount for the commander to use to do anti-aircraft work. No remote control. It's interesting.
When you have to get out of the tank to do anti-aircraft work, you're not doing a lot of anti-aircraft work.
You're staying inside. And there's reasons for that, and we'll go on get into that a bit later. Engine started out with the 1,200 horsepower for the Type 99. Did get upgraded partway through its life, and then going into the 1,500 horsepower V12 diesel engine for the 99A.
And that's a German-designed, Chinese licensed and built engine, which Chinese are getting pretty good at doing things, particularly well. They're getting pretty good at building these things. I wouldn't want to bet against it either, but yeah.
All right. Greetings from Ireland, lads. Thanks, P Island, and Raghu. Thank you for the condolences.
Now, I just want to put someone up on screen here. Half-Life ABC. Happy birthday, dude. Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Who else did we want to address there? Yeah, P Island. Nice to see you. And
yeah. We're all thinking of that scene from Utopia, which is an Australian comedy show about why are we buying these submarines, John?
To protect us from the people we sell everything to.
So and to protect our trade routes. Well, who have we got our most trade routes with? China. Yeah. So anyway. It's a very funny show for anybody who wants to look it up. Utopia on the ABC.
It's on Netflix, I think.
Working Dog Productions. Very funny. It's a beautiful little skit about decisions of how Australia's making choices. Anyway, where were we? All right, transmission. So we've got the 1,500 horsepower V12 diesel engine and the 99A. The original Type 99 prototypes had a manual transmission. Again, it was upgraded to automatic, and the 99A has an automatic transmission with 6 forward and 2 reverse gears, giving a good burst of speeds of up to 80 kilometers on road or 60 kilometers off road, where I think the torsion bar suspension would still be giving a bit of a bumpy ride if you're crashing over the over off-road terrain at 60 k's an hour. It's pretty bloody fast for a 58-ton tank. With 2 reverse gears, we're guessing it's a wee bit faster than the T-72 going backwards.
Yeah, that's not a T-72 gearbox. We are going to talk at some significant length about...
have you read what we wrote?
I haven't read all of what you wrote. I figured I'd have to listen to it. We're also allowed to have conversations, Robin. Continue.
All right, so a bit faster than the T-72 going backwards, but the only people putting numbers to the Type 99 going backwards is War Thunder, as no one else is admitting to seeing how fast they go backwards. War Thunder is giving it a 32 to 35 kilometer per hour in reverse, and we'll go more into where they get their intel later.
Well, as we've discovered, though, War Thunder has some pretty good gear.
well, as I said, we'll go more on where they get their intel later. Operational range of 600 kilometers with an internal 1,245 litre fuel tank, with another 200 Ks using external fuel drums.
That's a big range.
Yeah, I mean, that's twice as far as an Abrams.
Yeah.
Then again, the Americans prided themselves on having the best logistics stream to support all the tanks, but it's still a long, long way.
Look, in theory, the Americans have got an oil pipeline to the nearest depot, but pipelines can be damaged. It's no guarantee.
Brandon Make Stuffs, howdy. Thank you very much for joining us. Hello from Ottawa from Antonio A. And who else we got? Tasman, Vlad. Yep, that's it. Development. During the 80s, China realized they were getting left behind in tank technology, but had made good connections with the Western nations. I mean, they were building the L7 guns under license for the Brits.
Yep. Still are.
Yep.
Chinese light tanks are still pumping out the L7s. The American Booker uses the L7 as well, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So that L7 gun, it's the immortal weapon.
And they were moving away from the Soviets. However, 1989, they decided they needed a plan to replacement of their existing tanks, as they were getting defeated by a guy with a pair of shopping bags. And from the 90s until 2016, they went to a lot of effort and money to modernize their tank fleet. However, 2016, a new defense paper came out, stating the focus was now going to be on the Navy and Air Force, which is why they built, 5 aircraft carriers in the last 8 years?
Well, they've got the Type 3s just been put to sea.
The point being is that the Army had a plan of saying, we're going forward with this Type 99, we're going to make everything good about it. And then suddenly the budget for the Army was cut, and everything was put into building aircraft carriers and planes to fly off things. Welcome to Shlomo from Auckland.
Mm-hmm. We got someone watching on Twitter as well, Rob.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, for those who don't know, yes, we're streaming on Twitch, YouTube, something else now. For John's, all the efforts he's gone to
Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Instagram only allows for an hour, which isn't going to fly for us. Anyway, we've made our lives immensely more complicated, and it's good to see someone's watching us on another platform.
When we say we mean John, because he's the one doing all the work here. I just come along and talk about drink beer.
I had a moment this afternoon where I nearly just threw everything in the bin and gave up, but here we are. It appears to be working at this point, even if we're
the shirts are very desirable, and they make us look very svelte. Thank you for saying that, Alexander. All right, so the Type 99 was designed as a replacement for the Type 88 from 1989, based on the T-72 chassis.
Now, aside from the autoloader, there's not a lot of T-72 left. I mean, new gearbox, new engine. Obviously, it's the Russian 125mm gun, but a longer one as the basis. And to look at it, it looks like literally when we did the Guess the Tank, there were a lot of people who thought it was going to be a Leopard 2 of some variant. But it's so it looks like it basically looks like a Leopard 2 A5, and it's because it's got the arrowhead cheeks on the turret. But it's very interesting in that way. The other thing is the road wheels are spaced quite differently. Sure to give conniptions to model makers because they're really uneven. Although the T55, I remember when I did a 3D print of that, I was like, wait a minute, what's going on with these road wheels? And it actually makes sense. Why not put the road wheels under the heavy bits of the tank rather than some artificial sense of symmetry? So good for them on that. Anyway, the issue is it still has the T-72 autoloader. And I believe this is a reason we're not going to see a Chinese ground invasion of Taiwan. They might do other offensive actions against Taiwan just because they need a new tank. If there's one thing the Taiwanese are going to be able to do, it's build a lot of NLAW or Javelin analogs because Taiwan's got a lot of manufacturing, in particular a lot of high-tech manufacturing.
In fact, the main thing about gaining control of Taiwan for China would be the heart of the microchip production of the world. The basis of that is basically the Taiwanese have said, yep, we are the place to make microchips, and everywhere else around the world sucks. So that's it. I mean, there's
an interesting issue with microchip making that I only came across this week, which is that the company that actually drives microchip manufacturing is a Dutch company that makes the microscopic lithography equipment. That you need to draw the microchips, which are getting very close to atomic level now. They're getting so tiny, and that's a Dutch company. And the Americans are getting very antsy because the Dutch company is like, well, we don't see why we can't sell to China just because you don't want China having chips. So there's a lot of high-level wrangling with the Dutch going on to maintain that embargo.
So, expect a terrorist activity to happen in Holland anytime soon.
If it can happen to Nord Stream, it can happen to anyone.
Right. For those who want to know, in the beer tube today, we are drinking the Chinese Tsingtao, which is disappearing as I speak. There we go. The green bottle on the green background. Oh, hang on, I've got to figure out where I'm holding it. So, John, tell us. This is not going to be the beer for the beer review. This is the beer we're drinking while we're talking about the tank.
So it's the house beer.
It's the house beer, yes, as you said.
Yeah, Tsingtao is.
We have done it before as part of the Type 15. So
Yeah, it's the Chinese Fosters, or Heineken or Budweiser. It is just a lovely beer on a hot, humid day because it's
a
for China.
34 degrees here in Canberra with about 90% humidity today.
Yeah, so good day for us. Yeah, and look, if by some chance you've never had Qingdao, then it goes well with the Chinese meal if you're sitting outside having it. North America, wait for summer. It's no cold weather beer, but yeah. Yeah, I like it. All right.
All right. Based on the T72 chassis, including the T72 autoloader, so still very vulnerable to being a jack-in-the-box.
And the other issue with the T72 autoloader that's becoming more and more of a problem is just that the penetrator length is becoming everything for armor penetration. And with the two-part ammunition that gets folded in by the autoloader, you're stuck with half the possible length for the penetrator.
Yep.
So the future generation of both Russian tanks and everyone else's is going to move away from that two-part load. I wonder if you're not going to see something where the penetrator gets separately loaded and then the propellant
full-part ammunition rather than two or three,
or the Sabo goes in around it. Or whether you put the Sabo in and then load the penetrator and then the propellant. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. I'm obviously not a tank turret designer, but it's definitely getting that the maximum length of the penetrator does lead you to think that loading the penetrator separately is going to be a thing for autoloaders to deal with in the future.
We feel for you, Antonio. As you said, it's -6 and a snowstorm in Ottawa.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it's pretty hot here. But, we've got solar panels on the roof and air conditioning, so just crank it. It doesn't matter.
All right. Names. Now, this is where we get to the names. It first started out as the Project 9910 or WZ123. In Australia, we call them Zs, not Zs. Sorry. So for any overseas people that might want to say, what's a Z?
Although the Sesame Street effect means that enormous generations of Australians have grown up with Z.
My kids have moved away from Sesame Street.
Okay.
Still there, but yeah, okay.
What does Paw Patrol have to say?
There are two different versions of Paw Patrol. That's the thing. There is the English and the American version, so you can have either, depending on what you want to do. Yeah, this is what you learn when you become a parent. All right, the WZ123, then in prototype phase was called the Type 99, then the Type 98, sorry, first called the Type 98, then the Type 98G, went for 5 years as prototype. The tank was trialled in all terrain over China with the 4 prototype tanks built, driving over 20,000 kilometers and firing 760 rounds each.
Each. Okay. 760 rounds didn't seem like a big number, but okay. Each is a lot. Yeah.
Basically, well, even that's averaged over the four prototypes that were running around for that 5 years. Having met or exceeded the testing requirements, it was given the green light to go into production, which was when it was then renamed as the Type 99. Or the Type 99A1, which is different from what became the Type 99A.
Yeah, so there is a line of thinking in some quarters that the Type 99A1 is what we would call the Type 99, and the Type 99A2 is what we call the Type 99A. But we're just going to keep going with Type 99 being the first derivative and Type 99A being the more modern one. So, but some people will call it other things.
Or the Type 99G was first.
Where does that fit in?
Guy, the Chinese word guy is GAI. However pronounce that. As I said, I only speak Australian and foreign. Which nobody else actually speaks. It was first unveiled at the National Day Parade in 1999. The Type 99A is also sometimes called the Type 99A2, which is different from any new tank design that we may think of as being an upgrade of the Type 99A to the Type 99A2. Isn't this fun?
Oh, yeah, it's fascinating. Yes, I thought we were done with the rivets, but here we are.
No. And I'm actually one of my favorite shows from Dropout. For those who haven't, very good streaming service. If you want to get Dropout, love their shows. New season of Dimension 20. Anyway, actually, they should also be called the ZTZ Type 99 or ZTZ Type 99A, as ZTZ is the first 3 letters of the Latin alphabet of the Mandarin pronunciation of Armored Vehicle Tank Main Battle. In Mandarin, armored, main, and battle all start with Z, or so the internet says.
Yeah, I mean, cool story, bro. We're still at the fact we're calling it 99
But the
instead
point-
of. I don't even know what 99 is in Chinese. I feel bad. I should know that. But
the point being is, if you're actually trying to provide a designation of these tanks, you would misdesignate these things left, right, and center unless you actually understood how these things. And if you're programming in your hunter killer buddy threat identifier to say, I need to shoot this Type 99A in this location with my 120 mil round from my K2 Panther, and it says, hang on a second, that's a Type 99A2. You need to be shooting it here instead. These things matter, because if that somebody's got to program that information in, and if you're getting just like miles to kilometers and why things crash into Mars, you got to know what you're doing.
I did love on that that vein the Centaur rocket, which failed, leaving Nichelle Nichols' ashes floating in space.
I knew she was going up. I missed that it failed.
But but the launcher, if you go to the United Launch Alliance webpage, they've got the width of these rockets in the length of the rockets in feet and inches, and the width in meters. And I'm like, this is a bad start. I'm not saying that's necessarily what caused their failure, but anyway, she's still in space.
Right.
And there's I think
Uhura from Star
Trek. I think Scotty's on there as well, and one of the others as well. So it's all these kids' science projects. I mean, it's a really unpleasant little disaster by a company that should do better. But
America, Britain, and even Canada, we're all blaming you lot for rejecting going to fully into the metric system. Even though feet and inches are still a much easier version of counting things under 2 meters.
It'd be nice if 10 centimeters was more of a measurement. That would be something we could get our teeth into, but it's not. It's not going to happen. So, okay, let's keep going.
All right. So the Type 99 was in production from 2001 to 2011. The Type 99A was in prototype form from 2007 and started production from 2011. However, was not officially recognized until the Victory Day Parade of 2015. So you've got these tanks.
Is that victory in World War II?
I didn't look that up.
Okay.
That's one of the days. that could have been the defeat of the nationalists. In 49. I don't know. There was just what was listed at. So again, you've got this tank that's been in production and it doesn't come out. And don't recognize it officially until 4 years later. So again, they're looking at secrecy, or just assuming that nobody can actually tell the difference between a 99 and 99A. I don't know.
Fair enough. So you're saying here in your notes, Rob, that the 98 prototype didn't have the autoloader?
No, had a 4-person crew, no autoloader, manual transmission.
So how's that based on a T-72? Well, they just had the carousel down there and they're picking bits up.
We have a photo. I have seen we have a photo of it in there. In the slide deck. So I can't remember which. I'll point it out next time we come up. It had no ERA, and the driver in the center. The Type 98G, prototype installed the autoloader and ERA and upgraded the engine to 1200 horsepower. I think the prototype 98 only had about 840 horsepower, so quite low.
That's Russian levels of horsepower.
Then the prototype Type 99 added the laser dazzler, which we'll get to, and most visually significant, added the Leopard 2 A5 style sloped arrow armor plates on the front of the turret with additional composite armor layers on the side, which increased the size and width of the turret whilst moving the driver slightly to the right. Excuse me. If you want to eyeball the difference between the Type 99 and the Type 99A, the giveaway is the driver's hatch moved towards the center, not entirely the center of the tank, so of the cannon. So yeah,
I have seen people in forums go, "Oh, that's got to be the older Type 99 because the hatch isn't dead center." It's like, oh, no, it's not.
And the 98s was center, and it's only when they've shifted across when they've, who knows why? I don't know. It started out as an evolution of the Type 90 Type 90-2 sold to Pakistan as the Al Khalid.
Al Khalid, Rob.
Al
Yeah.
Khalid. Yes, sorry. I'm always going to get that wrong.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone who tries to offer us production notes, though. Alexander Vlad's asking if it has air conditioning, and I don't know, so I'm going to guess no.
We will get to that.
Oh, okay. All right.
1,200 produced, as we said. It's a very expensive tank for China at 2.5 million. However, I found they still cut a lot of corners when designing the tank, partly for doctrinal reasons and partly for cost reasons. And we'll get more into that later. It forms the core of the PLA, so it's the People's Liberation Army, usually People's Liberation Army Ground Force, if you're talking about tanks, heavy combined arms brigades. So they have two brigades there with 300, I think it's 300 in each. Anyway, however, two problems from the T-72 heritage. Weakness to recent Western anti-tank weapons, which target carousel ammunition in top-down attacks. The
famous flying turrets of the T-72s in Ukraine. I mean,
I saw a photo the other day, and it got way up there. I mean, it was a T-72. It was a good 300 feet in the air.
I mean, turrets are heavy, but at the same time, when you set off, let's say the magazine was full, 60 odd rounds of 22 in the carousel. It's a lot of propellant. You'll get some air, and it almost seems unsporting the way the current generation of Western anti-tank weapons just zero in on that disc of high explosive.
All right, so there we have the Type 98G. For those people who can't see in the slideshow, yeah, you can see there was no ERA. The driver was in the center, and so forth. All right, back to where we were talking about the 99A. 99As, 99s. Two-part ammunition, limiting the length of the penetrator.
Yep, as discussed.
Yeah. Yep. It's currently the main determinant of APFSDS ammunition effectiveness. So, again, if you can increase the length of your penetrator, you can get through more armor. And as has been saying, the frontal armor is said to be about 1,000 mils of rolled homogeneous armor.
RHA equivalent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everything when people use RHA in tanks is just guesses and equivalents.
Yep.
It's not actual 1,000 millimeters of steel.
No. And that's one thing. I'll say it now. From the Type 99 to the A, they increased the effectiveness from about 600 to 700 mils of RHA. Here we go. This is your point.
Yep. Yeah. No, I was just talking about the penetrator. Sorry, but the other thing that it does carry the Russian equivalent of reflex missiles, which, because we know that China is very good at making things in very large numbers, I am willing to go out on a limb and suggest that you will very likely find Chinese tanks in the field actually with their 4 reflex missiles, which gives them a range out to about, I think, 4,000 to 5,000 meters.
5,000 during the day, 4,000 at night.
Yeah, but certainly it gives them a really good long reach to open an engagement if they have identified an enemy in the distance with their copious electronic systems. So it's really quite interesting to see that, because the Russians could be quite dangerous with all these missiles they could have, but the chance of them ever having them were low. China's more likely to have the good gear.
Yep.
And the built-in dozer blade of the T-72.
Yes. Yeah. So they've got a built-in dozer blade on the lower front glasses, enabling it to do its own entrenching, so they can build its own berm, as it were, to hide behind. And one of the main things that the Chinese tanks do, they come with their own GPS. So the commander doesn't have to rely on maps or their phone looking at Google Maps, unlike the Russian tanks, which don't have their own inbuilt GPS. And seems such a simple thing to have, and makes life so much easier.
I'm guessing the Chinese have their own system of GPS called Beidou or something like that.
But, I don't know. It was listed there. I was saying, nobody's going to know what I'm talking about. When I just say it's their own version of secure global positioning, so they can figure out, I am here on this map, and I have a electronic map in front of me showing me where I am.
There's one interesting thing with GPS, which is that the chances of the satellite systems surviving a high intensity war are a bit on the low side, but GPS doesn't actually need to be in a moving satellite. The system works just fine with a transceiver in a known location. So you could, for national security and redundancy, just have GPS transceivers on hilltops, and the systems would actually work quite fine with those.
As long as you're still radiating EM spectrum and stuff, though, making yourself a target.
Your transceiver could get wiped out, but at least you know it's not getting shot out of space. And the thing with space is that
it's hard to hit.
Well, the thing with space is, though, that there's a real danger of runaway debris. Once the first few start getting blown up, the extra debris in orbit will render those orbital bands unusable, which is...
And welcome to Baby Goose. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Hey!
And as Raghu says, bring your own phone for the Russian tanks. There you go. All right. Now, the big development was, as we said, the Type 99 to the Type 99A. One comment I read that I like the sound of was that the Type 99 was China trying to brute force a second-generation tank into being a third-generation tank.
Which is why it looks like a Leopard 2A5, even though it's a T-72.
And the first tanks had all the basics of a third-generation tank, but none of the bells and whistles that actually made it comparable to other third-generation tanks. So it was there, but not quite. Then the Type 99A came along, and China had a platform that could actually apply all the third-generation upgrades onto, including better ERA, designed to protect against tandem charge warheads. So because they weren't slapping on as much composite armor as Western tanks, but they wanted to have as better protection than the Russian tanks. They said, right, we're going to slap more ERA onto the front and the front of basically and the turret of the Type 99A.
I mean, one thing that's come out of Ukraine is that ERA does work. You know, to the point that the Ukrainians are slapping Soviet ERA onto Leopard 2s. So, you know, it's just, you know, everything is getting ERA thrown on it to protect it. So it's really been validated because it was more a Russian system than a Western system going into this war. But I think going forward, we're going to see variants of ERA on everything.
Operating the Glasnost after injecting crocodile into my what?
No, just move on. Move on. If you don't understand the comments,
okay. All right.
Yeah.
So they've got better ERA, and so the ERA from the 99 to the 99A, as I said, is designed to defeat tandem charge warheads that Western in-laws and everything else tend to use.
They do seem to just though offer protection against, you know, anything coming in at high speed, making something go bang out the other way does seem to be a workable defense. Yeah.
All right. Better thermal images to the gunner and the commander. So they're basically a lot of tanks these days either have a thermal imager for the gunner, but not the commander. The Type 99As have it for both, which allows them to both be looking out and doing stuff. And let's face it, as we've shown with, as everybody's found with the Ukrainian activities, having thermal images, no matter what the tank, is better for everybody involved inside the tank because you can actually see what you're doing, especially at nighttime.
We've said it before, but it bears repeating. The thermal imager is today the #1 determinant of
first shot.
First shot, which means success in tank combat. How good the thermal imager is pretty much the most. Forget the engine, forget the gun. If the engine's good enough and the gun's good enough, the thermal imager will decide whether the tank succeeds or not. So, having said that, there's a YouTube channel called Explosions and Fire, which is an Australian, and he built himself a thermal heat seeker in his shed. And as he said, I'm a bit worried about going from watch lists to act lists.
I know some people in Canberra who might be interested in visiting this.
Anyway, look up Explosions and Fire. It's his most recent video on building a heat-seeking warhead. By being a very smart guy and taking a bunch of cheap stuff off the shelf, he was actually he made something that would have done the job. It's a bit terrifying.
Yeah, I was about to say, you've got to be careful with that in Australia because you got no protections here for when somebody comes knocking on the door.
Yeah,
you'll have a 14-day holiday with no. All right. Better fire control systems for the 99A. Better C4I, so comms, communication, control, blah 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 blah. I can't remember them all. Maybe because of all the beers. And battlefield management systems. They're being called China's first information technology tank. So basically, really trying to integrate the IT into the tank and make it effective as part of the system.
But we will talk about the lasers, but later. The lasers are really interesting.
Dazzler. Better engine, as we said before. It's they have increased the
1,500 horsepower. I mean, it's a 28 horsepower per ton heavy tank.
Better crew comfort now. So this is where they do have heaters, they do have AC, they do have
there we go.
Storage, they do have better ergonomics. They figured out the turrets were too low for the commander and the gunner, so they've actually increased the height of the turret, so they actually have more room to move around inside.
Is that a Chinese thing, do you think? I mean, the Russians deliberately selected very short people to operate T-72s, so you wouldn't have thought the Chinese would have to adapt that much.
But
okay,
it's just
they want higher seats. That's fine. Give them boosters.
It's just basically they said we want to make the crew more comfortable because, as we've discussed here many times, your crew being able to do it, being able to do the task for longer means you are more effective as a force multiplier. Better reverse speed. So as we're saying, it's gone from a manual transmission to an automatic gearbox with 2 speeds in reverse. Increased gun depression. How's this? Compared to the T-72, that is. So it's gone from about 7 degrees gun depression to about 9 degrees.
So from bad to still not great, but better.
Better.
Yeah.
About 2 degrees. And then when you're at the top of the hill shooting down, that's
it's I mean, you know, I've been playing a bit of World of Tanks lately, and it really annoys me when I get to the top of the hill and I can't shoot at people on the ground. It really annoys me.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay, I'll have to talk about that later at the end. All right, sure. Hunter killer system. So they've got a targeting system for the commander.
So this hunter killer gets thrown around a lot, and it doesn't get defined very well often, I find. So let's just quickly go. This basically means the commander has a full equivalent of the gunner's sights, but he can go out and designate a target, and then when the gunner services his existing target, the tank, the turret can automatically slew around to service what the commander said that this is your next one. So it lets you queue targets, essentially. Yeah.
All right. It has, so it's got a hunter killer system. Again, there are plenty of 3rd generation tanks running around these days that do not even have that. So it's
even the Challengers have issues in that front, I believe. But
no, they've got Challenger 2s are fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
that's where we first started talking about it. All right. They do have improved ammo, including new depleted uranium APFSDS rounds.
Come on, Rob, what does it stand for?
Armor piercing, fin stabilized, discarding sabot.
Bing, bing, bing. You got
it. But I have to look at it. I can't. I have to actually read the letters.
Yeah.
I know what the letters stand for, but I can't. I don't know it off the top of my head.
It's my second favorite military acronym after Katavar. Yeah.
All right. And we know this because once again, someone had to win an argument on an internet forum. And this time was War Thunder. And so they posted classified documents proving they were right about the muzzle velocity, the accuracy, and the penetration capabilities of these new depleted uranium rounds. Because
winning an argument on the internet is more important than national security, and we have known this for years.
War Thunder very quickly took them down, but people were quick enough to. I watched a segment about it and how supposedly that's how some of our French submarine documents got leaked online from Australia
for the submarine we could never build.
Yeah, but that's supposedly where ours when they got leaked. That's where it was on a War Thunder. World of Warships.
If I was running the War Thunder forums, I would at this point have preemptive moderation on them. But obviously they're choosing not to bear that cost.
But I mean, coming from inside China, you got to say they've got state security buddy looking at that stuff.
Yeah, they had to fire up a VPN to get around the firewall. No, you're wrong.
So yeah, and look, there was photos, the technical specs, and everything in Chinese, and some English translations with them, and so they knew exactly. And you can say, it didn't look like any sort of false flag sort of operation or whatever you want to say, saying, we're just trolling you or anything. No, it looked pretty legit. And as I said, they were quickly taken down. All right. However, they are being how are they being used? How are the Type 99s being used, John?
Well, intriguingly, the Chinese are using the brigades as their base unit of action. So these are for their heavy armored brigades. But they're still going with a Soviet. Earlier, the Soviets using, was it brigade combat teams?
No, they were going divisions.
Yeah, so I thought they were doing battalions. But anyway, let's move on from that. Rob, tell us more about how they're being used.
All right. So China is similar to the Soviets/Russians in that their approach to tank fleets. They have 2 tanks, the Type 96 mass-produced tank. They have 3,500 of those built at $1.6 million each. And the Type 99 Elite tank, as we said before, 1,200 of those built at $2.5 million each. Now we're going with US dollars because that's what everybody does. However, the People's Liberation Army ground forces have come up with their own doctrine of how they want to use their tanks. Now, this is the interesting part. They've put together a combined arms force of armor and integrated infantry and support. So, as you're saying, they're brigade forces, whereby they have the armor matched with infantry to go with them. There's no armor just by itself. The plan being that in open country, the armor is forward and takes the approach of maintaining distance to the enemy, using missiles at long range and not seeking to close the gap with the enemy armor. So basically, they want to have a very standoff battle with any enemy forces coming towards them. So, and there's certain places in China that are designed for that.
I mean, area of the Nile is effective if you can do it. And also just maintaining a strategic offense with a tactical defense is always a very powerful position.
In built-up urban or close terrain, they send the infantry forward with the armor being behind, as the armor is too vulnerable. As we said, it doesn't have anything on the sides. Right, an RPG-7 will go through the sides just above the tracks on the sides. If you're not hitting the hull, not hitting the turret, it'll go through that. There are the side skirts are just a bit of metal. They're not anything. There's no AERA. They're not providing any extra armor. They are very vulnerable from the sides. However, the emphasis of long-range engagements promotes the idea of armor and ERA only to the front 60 degrees of the tank. This reduces the cost and the weight of the tank. So yes, they are much heavier than T-72, but they are still much lighter than any Western tanks at 65 to 75 tons for Challengers and Abrams and Leopards and so forth.
Alan's asking what is War Thunder, and I think that's worth addressing because not necessarily everyone will know. War Thunder is like World of Tanks, but it does planes and naval forces as well. It's a arcade-ish simulator combat.
It's more of a
group play.
It's more of a simulator rather. It tries to have whereas World of Tanks has basically you have so many hit points you can run around and you can get shot as many times as you have hit points.
I don't think that's a level of detail on
War Thunder is much more trying to say, okay, this is the tank. If you shoot it here, it will explode. It doesn't matter if you're shooting it with a 125 mil round or a 105 mil round. If you shoot it here, it will explode. Whereas for World of Tanks, if you hit it with a 125, it'll do X amount of hit points. If you hit it with a 105, it'll do Y amount of hit points.
To the point at hand, though, War Thunder is a computer game in which tank nerds argue with each other about whether the stats are realistic.
Oh, God, yeah.
And they have forums that they do this, and it has become an enormous national security problem for many countries that their actual tank designers are getting in there and saying, I will show you the schematics to prove that you are wrong. And
why my tank should be better.
It's quite hilarious.
All right. So as we're saying, the ERA and the armor is only to the front 60 degrees of the Type 99, which reduces the cost and the weight of the tank, as they're not expecting to be hit in the very vulnerable sides of the tank. Not using or building tanks to be used in built-up terrain is also a reason for not having a remote weapon station, making another cost savings measure. I mean,
that's going to bite them in the ass.
As the commander is discouraged from sticking their heads out in case of gaining unwanted wisdom, as in a third eye. That's
a beautiful Chinese phrase. Chinese have a lot of good phrases.
Is that a phrase? I don't know if it's one of theirs, but I made that one.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay. Anyway, unwanted wisdom. Yeah.
Yes. I was thinking, well, yes, the third eye is what you snipers do to officers and so
Well, back
forth.
in that T-55 episode, just when our guest then said, "Oh, well, my commander was martyred," and it's like, "Oh, okay."
Unwanted wisdom. Anyway, however, as export models of Chinese tanks have remote-controlled weapon stations and plenty of ERA on the sides, we know they can build them, and they are not supplying them to their own troops. So they're selling them to other countries like Bangladesh, Tanzania. This is the VT4 tanks, which are not, and the type and the Al-Khalid,
Al-Khalid,
and so forth. They have these things that they can provide, but they're not putting them on their own Type 99As. All right.
I think if I was the Chinese right now, I'd just be saying, yeah, that carousel ammunition's got to go. So clean sheet. Probably looking a lot at the French Leclercs, but yeah, it's they're going to need a new tank, and I think they know it. Other interesting features. We've discussed the fact the road wheels have got quite an uneven distribution, with putting a lot more support under the turret and less. It's just a very clever distribution of the road wheels to support the weight of the tank. I really like it. Millimeter wave radar suite, so that means it can return signals in the of a millimeter, so you can get very detailed images. You still got the general issue that you're radiating, making other people aware of your presence when you're blatting away with one of these things. But you can certainly get very detailed pictures of what you're looking at with them if you're pointing them in the right places. But then, Rob, we've come to the laser system.
Well, this isn't the Dazzler. This is just the laser system. So this is the laser communication system. So point of what do you call it? But so
line of sight.
Yeah, line of sight. So they have a behind the commander's hatch is a laser system, line of sight laser system that provides communications and IFF, identify friend or foe. So basically, rather than this is to reduce the e-inspection.
So instead of getting on the radio, you can be just blasting with it. You can do line of sight radar and radio communications as well, particularly in the microwave band. But laser is will also do it, and there's so much emphasis on laser equipment in this. I'm wondering if the Chinese aren't planning to have high intensity battlefields just completely jammed out in the radio spectrum, so that no one else can use it. And
good idea.
Yeah, good idea. And having an alternative in the laser spectrums is really quite clever. So you can obviously use, just like a carbon fiber does it, a laser to communicate a voice stream or just data. But there are issues with it in that smoke, weather, snow, sandstorms. There's a lot of things that can degrade the performance of these systems.
One of the fun things, back in my day of the army, with radio comms, a simple way of jamming the radio comms of anybody around you was just to get a bunch of radios, set them to a bunch of stations, and then and then tape down the squelch button on the handset. So all it does is go all the time. And so whatever bandwidth somebody might be or radio or frequency somebody wants to communicate on,
it's covered.
Somebody else is already just going and across that, and you just have 15 radios or 30 radios or however many you've got lying around, and you just hold down the squelch button and it does that across the spectrum. And that's basically providing, yes, you are broadcasting who and where you are.
You've invented the jammer, but you are broadcasting your position.
Yes.
But you definitely set that up on the hill over the rise from you.
That's what I'm saying. You tape it down and walk away. I mean, you might lose a lot of basic radio things to do it, but anyway. All right. So yes, the line of sight lasers are affected by, as John said, badly affected by weather. So fog, rain, snow, sandstorms. Because
smoke generators, lots of there are countermeasures to it is the point. Now, interestingly to me, it not only does it have a muzzle reference system, so a sensor on the muzzle saying this is the direction I'm pointing, it also has a position detector at the base of the barrel. So they're able to calibrate very quickly where the gun's pointing. And I'm not aware of this being used by other folks, but it's an interesting one.
Well, to my mind, it was when they did that, and they showed them balancing a spanner on the end of the barrel, whereas not a beer like the Germans. Yeah, like the Germans did. So so they know where the barrel is pointing, and if shots would stay on target once fired.
Now, our friend Lottie the Tank Whisperer has just done a video on the Centurion that she's been getting back in working order, and they've got the stabilizer working on it. And the video is quite terrifying because they put the GoPro on the muzzle and then started turning the tank. And with the stabilizers engaged, the gun keeps pointing at the target no matter what the tank does. And
cool.
it's
so, yes, Lottie the Tank Whisperer on YouTube. Go have a look. Great person.
Yep.
Lots of fun. All right. 1,500 horsepower engine, Chinese built, German design, diesel engine, V12, arrowhead turret cheeks, make it look very much like a late model Leopard 2. Active laser defense system to fry laser receivers.
Yep. And also to blind. Now, in the literature, it's just talking about enemy tank gunners or anyone looking through a sight.
Helicopters.
It is meant to defeat things like the Milan missile, which use SACLOS, which basically means you've got to keep the crosshair on the target to come in. So that if you're keeping your crosshair on it, this thing's going to shine a laser beam into your eyeball. So good luck with the targeting now, buddy. I honestly wonder, though, if this kind of blinding laser weapon, obviously quite sophisticated, targetable, whether this is going to be used in a civil defense role. You know, if you've got 50,000 protesters demanding an end to your government, something like this going out and just blinding them all would... Anyway, just saying that's...
Why wouldn't you just run them over with tanks?
Well, yeah, you get a lot of bad press for that. People making T-shirts based on it. I mean, I'm going to have a T-shirt design coming out next week based on that. You know, whereas there's nothing to see when you just zip out their eyeballs.
As we're saying, we are being facetious and horrible and everything else, so please do not at us.
Yeah.
All right. So, yes, it does have an active laser defense system to try and fry laser receivers, possibly blind enemy gunners. It goes up to 20 degrees elevation, so that's to take out any helicopters, but it's still limited to what it can do. So it's not 360. It's not doesn't protect against top attacks or anything like that.
Now, I mean, there was a lot of talk in the 80s that the British had been using laser systems on their ships, particularly in the Falklands War, and the Argentines complained about being blinded. Obviously, these things are violations of various conventions, but, you know, war is war. So now, in terms of the active protection system, we had this question from the audience earlier. This is kind of Russian APSs, which aren't what we think of as they're not hard kill APSs, but they are active and they protect. So I guess.
I mean, this is essentially slightly different, but they're similar to the Shora.
Yeah. Which doesn't work.
Active protection system, right. But it's not, as John's saying, it's not a hard kill system that most third generation tanks are being upgraded to. However, interestingly, plenty of the internet is showing a Type 99A with a hard kill system that shoots out two rockets essentially to take out any incoming rounds. But those are actually the foreign export tanks being sold with the GL5 hard kill active protection system, and not the Chinese tanks that only have the laser dazzlers. Now, I was going to inject an Australian here, a bit of nomenclature in here, dazzler. So usually a young man who might be called Darren in Australia would get the nickname Dazzler, because that is what, well, Daryl's also get Dazzler.
Yeah, Dazzler. Yeah, I mean, remember Marvel had a hero Dazzler who liked to dance in discos.
There you go. But so in Australia, we'll quite often re-nickname any Darrens or Daryls to Dazzler. So it's the point being is that's what we call them.
It's also humorous because we've never met a Darren who was actually dazzling. They don't exist.
All right. So
I don't know if we've got one on the line, but you know, I'm sure you're a nice guy, but you're not impressing much.
All right. So having said we've got the GL5 hard kill APS system, we know China can build them. However, they are not mounting them on their own tanks. Again, probably due to cost.
Mm.
Uh,
And just they're saying, well, we're going to design a new tank anyway, so just hold off. Yes.
Now, questions. How good is the front armor really? Good for surviving one shot. Sides are an easy kill. So basically, ERA is good for, you can take one hit, and if somebody else...
Well, you can take one hit on the point in the ERA that goes boom.
Yeah.
So it degrades. But the chance of getting a second hit on that one spot are low-ish, getting higher. I think the next generation of tank weapons will definitely look for damage and be able to target right into them. But yeah,
I'm assuming the K2 Panther is buddy doing that already, type thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, the point being is that it can survive one shot from the front. However, if you're shooting in the sides, it's going to go not going to last very long. How fast can go in reverse? As we said, War Thunder says 32 to 35 kilometers an hour. They probably have good intel on that. Do the electronics integrate well? Thoughts?
Don't know.
Well,
I mean, you cannot question that the Chinese can build very complicated systems that work extremely well, because most of us have these items in our house. I've got an inverter 3 meters that way that it is doing things no Western product can do with integrating the solar panels on the roof with the power supply. So they can do amazing things. They also often do a lot of really cheap, shoddy things, because that's how you make lots of money, is to do things as cheaply as possible. What have the Chinese bought here? It's untested. We just don't know.
Are the People's Liberation Army ground forces logistics any good? Or are they too big a bureaucracy to be effective to support a modern armored force? Now, this is one thing the Americans pride themselves on, is their logistics to their army. That is their main... I mean, you can talk about the Abrams all you like, but it's the logistics that gets the Abrams to where it needs to be, supported and in place and supplied, and everything else that actually makes it the most effective weapon around.
Yeah.
Can the Chinese army do that? Don't know.
Untested, which is the problem. And you got to remember, since the invasion of Tibet, which is getting
50s.
Getting on 70 years ago, China hasn't actually caused much trouble to anyone outside of China.
Vietnam, what, 79?
They got their asses handed to them as well.
They went over the border, they waved the flag, and they left.
Yeah, but the bigger point is that there's a reason why when the Americans want to start wars, countries like Australia send folks along, and it's to learn how to do things. And China hasn't had the benefit of that.
Otherwise, we won't get invited to the next one.
Yeah.
All right. Where will they be used? Now, for those who don't know, China is a big place. It's bigger than Australia. It's bigger than Europe. It's bigger than continental USA. And it has lots of different terrain. Huge mountains, dense forests, high plateaus, vast deserts, farmlands, mega cities, jungles, swamps, and islands. No one tank can work in all locations. Is the Type 99 flexible enough to be effective in all those places, or is the focus mainly on protecting the northern border from Russia? I think it probably is, and probably always will be, protecting the northern border from Russia is what their tanks are designed for.
Yeah.
Which is why they brought in the Type 15 to be able to do all the other things. But all their mainline tanks are designed to... I mean, let's face it, if Vlad doesn't win survives and doesn't win in Ukraine, 5 years' time, he might be looking, well, what else can I do to distract the people of Russia from coming after me and defenestrating me?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll talk about Taiwan more in the second half of the show, but I do think that it is well known that the Chinese looked at what happened in Ukraine and said, okay, there's a bunch of gear we've got, we're going to have to rethink.
Yeah.
For fighting Russians, they're like, yeah, this will be fine, but for doing other things, I think there'll be a replacement tank coming real soon. Yeah.
Right. Now, does cost direct doctrine, or does doctrine enable cost savings? What could have been achieved if the 2016 Defense Review had not starved the Chinese army of resources? Would there be a Type 99A2 with ERA mounted on the hull sides, fitted with a remote operated weapon system with a 360-degree, including overhead hard kill active protective system installed? 140 millimeter main gun, which is being trialed by the Chinese for the Type 99, but they just haven't figured it out yet. Fully integrated battlefield management system enabling secure comms against amongst the combined arms force. And lastly, safely stowed ammo in a blowout panel, because if you're wishing for things, why wouldn't you?
Oh, look, we've said before, the next generation of tanks from everyone are going to follow what M1 has already done, and there will not be ammo loose in the crew compartment.
No.
It's just too easy to score a kill by targeting that ammunition.
So is it just a T-72 chassis with a wannabe Leopard 2 turret, or is it the foundation of a good tank that was cut short of getting all the upgrades the Army wanted because someone realized that if you want to project power, you need a Navy and an Air Force?
Yeah, I think it was a good tank for its time, but that time is actually getting a little bit in the distance.
But as I was saying, all these other things they were looking at. I mean, the Abrams is 50 years old. Well, sorry, 40 years old.
Yeah.
44 years old.
The next model Abrams will be technologically unrecognizable from those old ones. The point being,
the chassis and what it's all built on.
Yeah.
And they could have done that, and they're doing that with the Type 99.
But
they could have added stuff.
The Americans with M1 made very deliberate decisions to future-proof it and to make the chassis the least important part of the tank. It's swapping boxes in and out. And
they say that even now it's too heavy, and to reduce the weight of it, the simple thing would be to go in, strip all the wiring out of it, and make it electronic rather than electrics.
I believe that's what they're doing with the new ones.
That saves you 5 tons and everything else. And say, but you've got to change everything in there. So yes, the Abrams X does that. But all right, conflicts. None yet, thanks, Meg. Very happy about that.
Thank you, China.
Thank you, China. Operators, China. Whilst they will sell tanks on the export market, like the VT4 and the Al Khalid, they keep in the Type 99 for themselves.
They might have some issues that there's so much Russian, German, possibly even American parts in there that they just wouldn't get the end user agreements to export it.
Do you think that'd worry them? They are too big a market. I mean, other countries might say, we need the trade, but China can say, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Anyway, they need a new tank. Is what we're getting at. This was an interesting development in all sorts of fronts, but it's not. It's a barely competitive tank today, and it's not going to be a competitive tank tomorrow. And I think the Chinese are smart enough to know that.
I agree, but. With their focus on the Navy and the Air Force, they're not going to be doing anything soon with in the tank production. They're going to be stuck with the 99A, and possibly upgrading the 99s to the 99As for the next 10 to 15 years. They want to have them all upgraded to a fully integrated information security tank, whatever else, by 2035 is their goal.
Yep.
All right. So variants, besides the 99 and the 99A, there are nil, as all the sporting roles are carried out by the Type 88 variant. So even so basically all your recovery, repair, and so forth, and bridge laying, and all sorts are carried out by the old versions of the Type 88s. And with that, folks, we are going to take a short break and let you listen to us rambling on to our friend Clayton from
Workbench Hobbies.
Workbench Hobbies,
the provider of the beer tube.
And we'll come back for beer review and other things.
Okay, so we are joined by for our wee break by Clayton, who's our good friend and second time on the show now.
I'm sure he loves being classified that way, John.
Everyone we interview is just there so we have time to go and have a wee.
Well,
hello, Clayton.
Hello, Clayton.
Hey boys, how are you? And look, I'm happy to fill any sort of break, whether it be wee or run to the fridge, but whatever it might be. Yeah.
Having sponsored the wee break by getting us the beer tube, it is all your fault. So thank you for agreeing to join us tonight and have a bit of a chat about tanks and the world in tank modelling. What's your favourite tank down the runway these days, or model? I don't know. What's going on in your world?
What's going on in my world? Well, obviously last year was pretty hectic for me in terms of the whole modeling scene, because that was when I kickstarted the YouTube channel. Been wanting to do that for a very long time, and finally found the courage or the self-esteem or the thick skin jacket to put on, to put myself out there and share the hobby with others. And yeah, man, I've just loved it. I put a heck of a load of pressure on myself in terms of creating meaningful content on a regular basis. But yeah, it's all been a bit of a thrill. I've taken a couple of weeks off over this Christmas break, and it's funny, I've kind of found myself missing that regularity and doing it. So hopefully I've got a little bit of content backed up now, and I'll take the pressure off myself for those regular uploads. And yeah, 2024 is going to be stress-free.
Clayton, where can our viewers find you on YouTube if they want more? And I have to say, your videos are beautifully produced. Just, you know, as someone who does a little bit of this stuff, the lighting is on point.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. And that's actually one of the things that I take most pride in is and I've sort of done it with everything, whether it be the business or any sort of artistic endeavor, is I take pride in presenting a polished product. And I guess that's probably why I stalled so long for starting the channel, because I was never quite happy with the result I'd get off a mobile phone, or, you know, the lighting would never. And anyway, last year I really took a deep dive into it, and a deep dive into the editing stuff, and really took pride in presenting something polished. And it's people are responding, and I'm really grateful for that. So yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate it.
So where can they find you?
Oh, that was the question. Workbench Hobbies is my presence on YouTube and Facebook. And plus I've got the website there, workbenchhobbies.com. It used to be the Workbench, but yeah, that got quite confusing, and you know, there was a little bit of sexual innuendo there, you know, with being on the Workbench. So I actually had to change it to Workbench Hobbies, so it was a little clearer for some of my viewers.
You were getting
So
some
it's only the sexual business on the Workbench.
I missed that, boys. Sorry.
Yeah, we talked over each other.
You were getting some comments that you weren't really sure what they were meaning, eh?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is some time ago, and yeah, it used to be called the Workbench, and then, you know, of course, there was all the ongoing jokes and innuendo and whatnot about, you know, oh, you're on the Workbench again, and, you know, yeah. So I needed to make it a little bit more clearer that this was a hobby page, and I was actually going to take it down like an online hobby store kind of road, like in selling products and things like that, which is why I kind of attached hobbies to the end of it. But look, it's just stuck. So it's Workbench Hobbies now. That's where you find it.
How often are you putting out content for your these days? What's your schedule like?
When I first started, which was back in March, I'd committed to myself. I mean, there's no commitment to do anything really. But to myself, I'd promised myself I'd do once every 2 weeks, or once a fortnight, if you like. But me being me, that was never good enough, and it sort of ended up slipping into once every week, which, yeah, that really tested me to produce the content. But I was very lucky. I had a lot of support at home, and my wife was very supportive with that, and allowed me time away from family and whatnot. But this year, I've committed to once a fortnight, and that way I'm going to make sure that I don't burn out and can continue to produce the content without it becoming a chore. At least that's the plan.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. All the evidence suggests that a 3-day publishing schedule is what you need to do to really grow a channel. But as an individual, you've got to be able to sustain what you're doing, and that's more important than the algorithm.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of guys in this modeling space that have put a lot of pressure on themselves, who have sort of hit that point of burning out, you know. so obviously don't want to be one of them. I've got a signage and branding business of my own. So, I mean, that takes up a lot of time. I've got 4 kids, grandchild. Yeah, so I've got a heck of a lot on my plate. But look, hey, it's not a chore if you enjoy what you're doing. And I absolutely love this hobby, and it's given me so much joy. And I love that I can share it with others now.
So a lot of what you build is model tanks, which is why we got you on the show. And we're just curious about what in 2023, what was new in the world of modeling? Because, sorry, when we say modeling, well, obviously none of us are walking down the catwalk, despite Rob's jokes on that front. But what's new in model tanks and model building in general? Because we've got a fair number of our audience do build model tanks and or scale models, but some of them haven't done it since high school, which is kind of our category. And so what's new in the field?
Well, I mean, it gets to a point where these manufacturers, you run out of subjects, right? Because there's only so many tigers you can build, and there's only so many Stugs you can build. So what's new? The release schedule of these manufacturers sort of goes in cycles. So there becomes, you get these waves of trends that seem to go through. So a couple of years ago, it was all about Stugs, or last year, for instance, we had this flood of Hetzers. I think this year is going to be the Tigers coming out, the Tiger Ones. So,
which is the sexiest tank of all time. So,
well, clearly. So it's probably more, yeah. So it's not like there's anything new as such. It just, things tend to be getting better. Like the molding technology is getting better, and in most cases, at least, because there's a lot of these things get rushed to market that don't, look pretty in the box, but don't really stack up when it comes time to build them. So yeah, in terms of trends, there's things like the 3D printing is becoming quite a big part of this hobby.
I was just going to ask that.
Add-ons and aftermarkets, but there's full kits you can get now in terms, that are completely 3D printed. I made the jump into 3D printing probably 6 weeks ago, and literally, like, some of the files and the content you can download for pocket change is ridiculous. So I guess the challenge for the manufacturers is how that they remain relevant when there's access to this sort of content online.
I mean, as someone who's done a fair amount of 3D printing, there's a few factors. One is that 3D printing is not as cheap as you might think, because they burn a lot of electricity, and the chance of burning your house down is not insignificant. So there is that. There are some beautiful files that people have spent an enormous amount of time putting online, though. That's amazing. But in terms of finish, a consumer level 3D printer, I'm not aware of one that's you got to do a lot of sanding to get them to the level of a injected model printer, don't you?
I know this is a podcast, but can you see this little fella here?
We've got the video feed as well, but yeah, we can see him. Yep.
Like, that was one of the first prints I did, and it's absolutely like mind blowing, because that was probably one of the things that held me off taking that dive into the 3D technology, because of all the issues that you've just mentioned there. But I literally downloaded this file of this German tanker, and I could scale. I scaled them down to 1/72nd scale, which is tiny, and you could still make out the detail on the badges on their, on their chests, and the collar boards and belt buckles and things like that. Incredible. And that was literally like a $400 printer.
Yep. Can I ask what you got?
It's a Frozon 8K Mini.
Okay, that's an FDM printer where it's got the filament going in.
No, not filament. It's
your resin printing.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I'm very much new to the 3D printed space, so yeah, that's about the limit of my knowledge there.
Yep. A lot of chemicals with resin printing, though, right?
There is a heck of a lot of this podcast I'm going to have to delete before I, let my wife listen to this. So burning down houses, bad chemicals, no, it's all fine.
The rest of the chemicals have been sitting in my garage for the last 25 years and haven't burnt anything. So
yeah,
it'll be fine.
Yes. No,
All right. So 3D printing as an add-on is obviously a thing that's going on in the modeling world at the moment. Then.
It probably has been for a few years, but I guess it's new to me because I've just taken the step into it. But what a lot of the manufacturers are doing now, rather than just giving you a kit full of plastic sprues and bits and pieces, they're putting 3D printed parts in there as well to level up the detail and the finesse in some of the finish on the things.
So they're embracing the idea what the community is going for, rather than saying you can't use that or you can't do this with our products or anything like that.
I guess it's just a value add, and it probably stalls people from making that jump themselves, because there's limitations with the molding process of molding styrene, and that's where the 3D printed parts can just elevate your model and just give you that extra level of finesse.
Yeah, it's an interesting space. Obviously people are moving quite heavily into diorama building, and there's ever more grotesque dioramas of Michael Whitman's demise. We're talking about tigers, but I guess that's where 3D printing can really help you. Bring out your vision.
Brace yourself for Whitman's demise, because Takom are releasing a whole new range of tigers next year. Well, this year, and man, you're going to see plenty.
I mean, you really need a Sherman Firefly to go with it, but yeah.
Yeah. I've got one of them in the stash. I'm just looking for an excuse to build that. So.
How has the pile of shame gotten bigger or smaller since
the pile of shame never reduces, Rob. It's the pile of shame only grows.
For those who don't know, the pile of shame is the things that he's bought and hasn't yet put together, but says one day he'll get.
That's the stash. Yeah, the stash. So actually, my wife, it's during this Christmas break because we had a little bit of time off, and that's pretty much what I do: is go to the stash, grab 5 kits, bring them in, put them on the couch, look through all the boxes, dream about the scheme or the one I'm going to build. Put them back, take them all back to the stash. So there's literally this rotating pile of kits on our coffee table this last 3 weeks that have just been, just to remind myself.
Inspiration.
Absolutely.
You've got a very patient partner there, mate. I'd hang on to that one.
I have.
Okay, so following you on Facebook, there's been some new scales that are more popular at the moment. It's because 1/35 used to be everything, didn't it?
1/35 was everything. Yeah, 1/35 and 1/72 to 76. Airfix bought out a whole heap of 76. Or Matchbox actually, sorry, a whole heap of 76 scale back in the day. But yeah, I mean, 35th was really like the where the cool kids were at. But yeah, it's the new big thing is 16th scale, 1/16 scale armor.
So that's bigger models.
Yeah. Pardon me. So yeah, the higher the number, the smaller the scale. So 35th scales. I should know the maths on this, but yeah, 1/16 is considerably larger than 35th. And 72nd scale is considerably smaller than 35th scale. But yeah, it's right. Yeah, so there's only so many subjects that a manufacturer can produce. There's no point in producing a vehicle or a tank where there was only 1 or 2 made and it isn't going to sell. They just wouldn't invest it. So that's the direction a lot of them are going now is upscaling to this 1/16 scale. And I guess the benefit of that is you can put more detail into it. There's a bigger surface area to paint and work with. The downside for me, and which I'll probably never build a 16th scale vehicle is
Thanks
just
so much room.
big. Oh, it's so
Yeah.
big.
Where are you going to put them all? You can have
I
one.
just- yeah. I mean, you think about a tiger or king tiger at 16 scale. I mean, it's, you know, we're talking, you know, how big's my fish kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
And
I've got to say, with scale, I mean, you know, you can build, and I'm thinking warship modeling here, but you know, something where Yamato's, you know, this long, you can build on Christmas Day when it's turned up under the tree. But when you get the bigger models, it's a much greater investment of time and effort, and you've got to have a bench clear for it for months to get all the twiddly bits on.
definitely. So I guess you get value for your money too if you're buying something like that, because it might take you 12 months to build it. But it's just all about where you put it. You know, those larger scales used to be really just in the realm of the remote control guys. You know, they would
one of the things you might see them is in the foyer of a defense building saying, this is what we're buying next or something. That's probably about the only useful display of that scale that I can think of.
Well, there'll probably be a lot of people screaming at the podcast now, because it's very, you know, it's very popular, the 16th scale. and I guess, look, if you're going to build
we'd
one,
love to hear their we'd love to hear their comments.
like and subscribe. Yeah, no, it's
all engagement.
Absolutely.
Tell us why we're wrong. We're wrong
It's
about
all
so many
engagement
things.
till someone says something horrible, and you know, you wear it like a bloody punch in the face. But anyway.
Yeah. Clayton, while we've got you here, can you tell us about your favorite tank, just as a tank?
Just look, it's boring, I know, but you can't go past the T-34, and I like the 76mm. You know,
okay.
I just like the shape of it. You know, it doesn't matter what it did, doesn't matter, you know, the history and whatnot. There's something about that tank I love. I love the shape. I love the story. You know, the guy that pretty much drove it across the country to put himself in an early days just to prove the damn thing. And just something about a T-34 I love. And I was lucky enough when I met you guys up at Oz Armour Fest up in Cairns to get a ride in the T-34 up there. So that was
they've got the 76 now. They've got the second T-34 up there. So
is that right? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, no, they did a video a couple of weeks ago saying, "Hey, look at our second T-34 guys."
Oh, I missed that. All right, no, that's very exciting. But yeah, look, Second World War armor, I'll build anything. I'll absolutely build anything. But the T-34, I have a very soft spot for.
It's so understated, just how advanced it was in 1940. You know, it's crazy that they had a 76mm cannon in a rotating turret, and no one else in the world was close, and a 500 horsepower engine. Which isn't to say it didn't have problems, but it was insanely ahead of its time.
Yeah, very cool. I can't even tell you why I love it. I just love it.
That's all right.
Nice one. And what's your favorite beer at the moment, mate?
Oh, hang on, favorite beer? Well, now a good mate of mine and very good modeler, Lucas Kasuba, is a brewer for Mountain Culture. So I'll have to say Mountain Culture. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, they're the hot, cool brewer in the Australian beer scene at the moment. Yeah.
He's supplying me a very generous stream of supply there. So yeah, woot, very happy Mountain Culture. But no, look, I'll drink anything. It would be easier for me to tell you what I wouldn't drink than what I would. Heineken scarred me as a young teenager. I just can't drink Heineken. I don't know what it is. And Guinness, no thanks. So I wouldn't give that to my dog.
Is that a general Guinness hatred or a stout hatred? Like, would you drink a dark beer from someone else?
I drink dark beer. I've probably never got past the whole Guinness thing. Because that made me quite ill once as well. So
I'm like that with bourbon. Yeah.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
Rob, you got any other questions, mate?
No, that's all good for me.
Okay, Clayton. Anything we've missed that you wish we'd asked you?
I don't think so. No. what about you guys? What's your plan for the new year?
just keep
Talking
doing what
tanks,
we've been
drinking
doing.
beer.
That sounds good. No, I love it. No, I love what you guys are doing. And there's that obvious connection between, the history of the tanks and just talking about tanks and scale modeling. So I appreciate the opportunity to connect all those dots and hopefully introduce people to this hobby, or reaffirm the love of the hobby. And obviously, if we can get more people talking about tanks, the better.
Absolutely. All right. Okay.
Thank
we're just
you.
gonna-
Folks,
And hello,
we're back.
we're back.
Please let us know we're back, because this is new technology. Somebody jump in the comments right now and say,
It's working.
because otherwise we're going to have to do this again in 5 minutes time when you're all
No. The stream's still running. We're good. Okay. Anyway, thanks for bearing with us there, folks. Hope you enjoyed that chat with Clayton.
We did.
Yes. Yeah. Antonio Akins
Thank you.
says it's,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Nice one. Okay. Second half of the show. Wait a minute.
The poll.
Boom.
Oh,
Look at that.
bam,
Bam.
bam.
Yes, I've got a Elgato Stream Deck now to help me manage the show, which is fantastic. Okay, so the poll is interesting. The most people are leaning towards it's a lot of tank for a lot of mare, sorry, a lot of money for a lot of mare, and great tank for the last century.
I just like, I think I talked it up to
21% saying it's good. Yeah,
There you go.
Yep.
could have been better, but that's what they got.
Yeah, I mean it's quite a tough one. But I'm very sure the Chinese are looking at recent events in Ukraine and saying, okay, we're going to need a new
Well,
one.
we're gonna have fitted with rather than fitted for and not
yeah.
with, which is a way of thinking about a lot of military things.
Yep.
At least, as you're saying before, at least they probably do actually have the 4 ATGMs in each tank, rather than the Russians saying, "Oh, supposedly we've got those in the arsenal, but I've never seen one in the T-72."
Yes, hello to Obliteron. I don't know if we've met you before, but
No,
good to
hello.
see you in the feed. Thank you, Antonio, Tasman, and Brandon, for validating our existence.
Because the way
Mhm.
technology has been going today, well, it was a 50-50 thing, I think.
Mhm.
And so I'm
Yeah,
glad we're there.
A lot of things went wrong today, but here we are. Okay, so we're going to pass on the beer review for a second while we just. Yeah, I've got this much to drink, so just give me a break. Okay, and let's talk about the Drive had a story about the people thinking about using hard kill active protection systems to counter drones. This is
Great idea.
well, it is something we have talked about months ago.
That passed us. They were very smart.
In this show we have talked about it, but that doesn't make us geniuses, because it's pretty obvious. If you've got a 3-dimensional radar that is automatically monitoring the space and can detect, I mean, some OPSs, no one's actually claimed they can do it yet, but are getting up to being able to handle anti-tank rounds in terms of the incoming velocity.
I mean, but FPS drones aren't going that fast.
No.
The point being is that maybe you have to wind it down to say, okay, look for things that are going 5,000 k's an hour as well as 10 k's an hour.
Yeah,
but
well, SPS,
I don't know.
SPS, you're up and around the 80 kilometers now, sort of.
I mean, but then again, if a car's driving past you, is that going to set it off?
Yeah, why not just obliterate it?
But it could be on your side. The point being,
yeah. Well, no. Yeah. This comes back to automated systems, and when you put the man in the loop and then rely on
you don't want to
the
put a
dozy.
person. You don't want to put a
Yeah,
person
because
in the
they're
loop.
texting their girlfriends and not paying attention.
We're
Yeah.
19-year-old bloody conscripts. What else are they going to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, there were all those beautiful scenes when Russia first invaded Ukraine of various Russians trying to get on Tinder to hook up with Ukrainian girls. And
Seriously? No, I missed that.
Yeah, a lot of dudes walked into a lot of ambushes that way. These ladies are not your friends. Okay. Anyway, but there is actually some serious thought being put now by people who aren't us
Because we are not serious thinkers.
into using APS in the counter drone role. Certainly, you know, we're getting to a really interesting point in tank design with it's like what needs to be in the tank, what needs to be near the tank. We've had our arguments with the Chieftain about whether electronic warfare should be in the tank. My argument is that the fighter jets have RIOs in the fighter jet, and the electronic space.
As we've seen in the Top Gun Maverick movie, they have it in one of the planes,
not the other one.
not the other one. Eh? So maybe in a platoon of 4 or 5 tanks, you could have the radio information officer in one of those tanks who's generating all the, and as the Chinese are doing, they're having their laser pointers going back to that one and providing all their information back that way. And does it need to be a tank, or can it be a armored protective, some sort of armored system that doesn't carry a 120 mil gun?
I still think that
These are all good questions. We don't know. They're
all good questions, and they're going to involve a lot of hard solutions. I still think that you actually need someone in the vehicle saying, "We've been lit up by a fire control radar. We need to enact countermeasures B through F." Or we've been lit up by a radar that isn't a threat, so we're not going to expose our position.
Now, Random Make Stuff has just pointed out a full auto G12 GA Sentry with flechette rounds makes me think Shadowrun, doesn't it?
It sounds very Shadowrun.
So please let us know if you just
back in 1990, we were just thinking about the future, and those guys at Phaser, they predicted a lot of stuff actually. But
Arnie is president because they changed the what was it?
Constitution?
35th Amendment to the Constitution to say that Arnie could run for president. Well, that close, boys and girls. Yeah. Soon it'll be President Rock.
Look, President Schwarzenegger would have been better than most recent alternatives.
And he's about the same age. Not far off.
Yeah, I just, but Biden,
much better
Biden or Trump, give me Schwarzenegger every day
anyway.
of the week. But, okay.
All right. Ammunition usage. Let's go down to Ukraine.
Oh, this is grim.
Hang on. Have you? How far?
Just give me a second. Let's talk about ammunition.
Zulu Warrior.
Yeah. Okay. Artillery shells used per day. The Wall Street Journal produced this data, just showing how in the summer offensive, the Ukraine was up to 7,000 shells a day, but now they're down to 2,000. Meanwhile, the Russians, because
they're actually up to 4,000. It was between 2 and 4.
Okay,
right?
Sure.
Yep. But so the Russians are using 10,000 shells a day. However, and as I said, the Ukrainians are expending about 2,000 to 4,000 a day, depending on the day. But during 2022, when the Russians were on the offensive, they were using up to 50,000 a day. Think about that. So 50,000 a day, and this is when the European Union declared they were going to provide Ukraine with 1,155 rounds, which is your standard sort
Russian
of
artillery.
Standard artillery round. They were going to produce 1 million of those for Ukraine during 2023.
And they lied.
Well, they did not achieve it because they only got about 400,000 or something like that. Whereas the Russians said, they burned through all their stocks, and then they turned around to North Korea and China and Iran and said, hey, can we buy some of these for you for oil and or whatever else they required? And those countries who had been stockpiling them, because when you're certain governments, one of the things you do is produce ammunition, because
when you think the whole world's about to invade you, because it is,
when America's
stockpile ammunition.
When you're worried that America is going to invade you, on the off chance you look at them funny, you do stockpile ammunition. And when you've got it at the end of the day, and suddenly you say, well, they're not going to invade us because they're going to go after those guys first, because they're the ones actually doing things. So I can sell these and then rebuild my stocks, because I've still got the factories going to build those 155 millimeter rounds.
But it's one thing about, let us speak of the benefits of socialism, because what we know is that literally the US and the Europeans have gone to their corporate weapons makers and said, we need 1 million rounds of Soviet standard 155 artillery ammunition a year.
There's NATO standard as well.
Anyway, but they want the Russian spec, because it's what Ukraine has the tubes for. And they're turning around saying, well, if you want $1 million a year, we need a guaranteed contract for 10 years, or we're not making it. And then they're like, oh, well, we don't want this war to be going on in 10 years' time, so you're out of luck. And basically, the Russians are outproducing the entire Western world in the relevant munitions at the moment, simply because they've got on a war footing, and they've said to their factories, we will give you the money you need, hire people. Wages are rising in Russia at the moment, partly because a lot of young men have been sent to get their legs blown off in Ukraine, but also just partly that the economy is booming because they've been disconnected from Western capitalism, and they're not paying all their money in licensing fees to major corporations. A Russian company's taken over all the McDonald's franchises and can churn out burgers cheaper than they could before.
All right. But at the end of the day, if the West decides they actually want to win this war, they can throw money in it and do it. But it's whether or not they're going to have that sort of gumption of actually turning around and saying, yep, we're going to put the effort in and the resources into winning this, and we'll provide Ukraine with 1 million rounds a month, because they could. We've got the capabilities, we've got the bandwidth, if those things are built. But at the moment, nobody's willing to put that sort of effort in.
Now we've opened the new beer, Rob.
We've opened the new beer. Now, for those who wanted to know what beer I would get for the Type 99 Chinese tank as a beer review, well, I did get, as I said, the Tsingtao, but that was the house beer. Tsingtao. That was the house beer. And do you know how many other Chinese beers are readily available in Canberra that aren't 0% alcohol and Tsingtao?
Yeah, none.
No, very few.
Yeah.
And they might be around, but I could not find them in my 3 forays to various bottle shops. And so I got beer Saigon Special. Can we show it?
No,
it's too green.
It's got a beautiful green label that is
with
Chroma King
with a dragon right on the can.
It looks like a very Chinese dragon. I'll give you that, Rob.
Beer.
This is premium quality beer from Vietnam, it says, Rob. So that's exciting.
And we've never done this one before, so I found it and I said, you know what?
Special on the side. And it's won some awards. Now, let me tell you,
it's a 330 ml.
Beer awards are slightly more worthwhile than wine awards, but not much. They're all pretty worthless.
It's a 330 ml can in a what you'd say it's a Red Bull style can of narrow and skinny of 4.9%. The writing is far too small for my old eyes.
Brandon's asked how many claws on the dragon, so it's got.
Oh, that is a good question.
It's like a human hand, so it's got 4 front claws and 1 thumb. But yeah.
Which means it's probably an imperial Chinese dragon rather than because the number of claws. This is what I got from my daughter.
Yeah,
the number of claws on your dragon tells you whether it's a regular dragon, an imperial dragon, or a Japanese dragon.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Okay.
From 1875. There you go. There's a date on it. But that's
they reckon they were making beer in Vietnam in 1875.
I don't know.
Okay, but, good for them.
But yeah, no, that was a very good question from
Brandon's a
friend?
smart dude.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone on the feed's a smart dude.
Of course we are.
If you want to be smarter, if you're one of our podcast listeners, you should come on for the live feeds if you can. I mean, we're at weird hours because we're Australian. Anyway, let's move on from that. We just got
to talk about the
beer. You know what this tastes like, Rob? Tastes like a big old domestic lager.
Yep.
Well done, because not everyone makes a decent domestic lager, including many big breweries that claim to be great breweries. It doesn't take cheap. Was it the Coors or the Millers we had?
Coors.
Yeah, that tasted cheap. This doesn't taste cheap like that did.
No.
So yeah, I mean, it's a
Ho Chi Minh City.
Yeah, Saigon. Yeah. It's a weird kind of can to buy your beer in, but it's
the same size as the Tsingtao bottle.
330 mil.
330 mil, but as I said, it's a Red Bull style can.
Now, if you're buying beer in the Mekong Delta, you don't actually want a tall boy. You want a small can that you can finish while it's cold and then get another one from the fridge.
There you go.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's good. All right, what's next? I mean, we were talking about, Ukraine is they're getting outshot. I mean, I love that North Korea is now sending ballistic missiles to Russia.
Yes. Oh, India's providing the 155 rounds to Ukraine.
Okay, that's an interesting geopolitical move.
I know, isn't it?
But,
because Russia might be turning around and saying, so those T90 sales that you wanted to go forward with, I know we're going to delay them for the next 5 years.
The Indians aren't getting any tanks out of Russia for a decade now.
Yeah,
so
but they're saying, well, you're supplying these 155 rounds to Ukraine because why?
I imagine India's sent an email to Ural Vagon Zavod saying, nah, we'll make our own things.
It's difficult geopolitical times for a number of countries there. All right.
Yep. All right. Let's talk about Gaza and the Red Sea.
Because who doesn't want to go?
Well,
no minefields there, boys.
I want to talk about this because it is relevant to Taiwan, which makes it relevant to this tank and tanks. So yesterday, as we record this on the 13th of January,
2024,
Western forces started airstrikes against Yemen. Yemen has been attacking Israeli flagged or Israeli bound.
Yemen, it's
the Houthis.
It's still in the middle of a civil war.
Houthis are the recognized government of Yemen, though.
Oh.
Yeah, they are, which is why a lot of reporting on this is wild. And in particular, the Saudis have been trying to make a peace treaty with the Houthis, as recognizing them as the government of Yemen. So they are pretty much the government of Yemen at this moment.
I mean, they control the vast majority area and so forth. But they, whether or not they're recognized as, I mean, are they sending any sort of delegations to the UN or anything like that? Or saying, no.
I don't know that level of detail. I don't care. Let's keep going though. The thing that is absolutely salient to me is that one, there is a requirement under international law for every state to intervene to avert genocide.
Genocide, John? Really?
Yeah.
What sort of genocide could be happening right now?
So that is a requirement. And it is also worth noting that the Houthis, their demand with their attacks on Israeli flagged and Israeli bound shipping in the Red Sea, one demand: a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. They're not asking for anything for themselves. They're not asking for money.
Or just a ceasefire.
Yeah, no, they don't want just a couple of days ceasefire and their campaign goes off. They're like, no, we want a permanent ceasefire. Fair enough. So the Houthis are in many ways actually on the right side of any sense of a rules-based order.
And to throw into this mix, South Africa.
Has case in the International Court of Justice,
and saying that Israel and their apartheid system of the way they're treating the Palestinians. I mean, it's coming from South Africa. I mean, yes, it's. I mean,
okay. Bringing things back to Miltech. Can you imagine if the South Africans start popping rockets at Israeli flag shipping going past the Cape of Good Hope?
Oh, and the Red Sea.
That would be extremely squeaky. But the issue with Taiwan is that a lot of people are saying, "Oh my God," because the American naval coalition in the Red Sea is having a big problem in that it's having to fire $2 million missiles to shoot down $5,000 drones, and the people looking at this saying, and particularly, if a destroyer might have 100 missiles on it, or if they're the smaller Sea Sparrows, they're quad packed 4 times that. But if they fire off all their missiles, they have to return to a port that has a stockpile of missiles to rearm. They can't replenish the sea. And it's like, well, what if they were facing China in the Taiwan Strait? Then they'd quickly be forced out of theater. And that is very true. But the bigger question that the Chinese are looking at is if they want to send an amphibious invasion fleet, what can Taiwan do to force their fleet back to sea, back into port? Apologies. So for China, they're probably looking at this saying, because Taiwan can produce a lot.
Yep.
Taiwan has enormous production capacities, more so than almost any other country in the world, except maybe China and Japan, South Korea maybe. So it's a bit terrifying for the US Navy in that they're being shown up by Houthis. It's also probably extremely terrifying to the Chinese to be looking at, well, what could Taiwan do in this similar situation to force our ships out of the water. So it's a really interesting one in that front. But at the same time, I personally would be saying, hey, maybe let's not be supporting the side doing the genocide and killing the children. Well, that's just me. I'm a bit weird.
You are a bit weird.
Yeah, a bit weird.
The idea that you would want a state-sponsored army to not kill 2.4 million people forced into a small walled-off enclave.
Open-air prison, as a conservative British Prime Minister called it.
Yeah. And look, the Israeli military forces have taken Gaza City and are slowly making their way south in order to suppress everything else. But I do wonder, once they get to the Egyptian border, have they thought about what's going to happen next?
Well, if you look at what the absolute nut jobs who are ministers in the Israeli cabinet are saying, people like Ben Gvir, who just reminds me of Scott Morrison as one of the worst people who's ever going to draw breath.
Scott Morrison being a previous
Australian Prime Minister. Yeah, but Ben Gvir throws off strong ScoMo vibes. He's talking about, we'll just drive them into the Sinai Peninsula, and I don't know what happens then. No one cares. Well, this is
2.4. Sorry, might be 2.3 million people then,
because we killed a lot of people already. Yeah, and then they all die.
Yeah,
and that's the plan.
Yeah, and we take their land.
Yeah,
that's the main thing. We take their land. It's now it's a hard thing. Now, Red Sea. On the Iranian front, we have the Straits of Hormuz, which are nice and narrow. And
so that's the Persian Gulf.
That's the Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
And so on the Red Sea side, we've got I don't know what's that area called between Yemen and
something Al-Bab, but yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's a very narrow strait. It's not a wide piece of water.
For people watching the feed, we've got a picture up right now of British crew all wearing their anti-flash gear because they were approaching the narrow part of the strait.
That includes their little white head coverings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and again, fun fact: Djibouti, who also provides a port for
China,
as well as American forces. And the Chinese have ships in the area.
Yeah, well, they've been being part of the maritime patrols against the piracy.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, so it's all interesting.
In terms of an attack on Taiwan, though, we are seeing the asymmetric nature of anti-ship and they call it A2D2, but area denial at sea. Is even getting to the point where the Houthis can do area denial at sea. So that's quite a big step forward, and that's why it's relevant to us talking about this tank, in that the chances of China being able to launch an amphibious assault across the Taiwan Strait are getting lower and lower with the current mix of technology. And the chances of landing a tank, hello, we're a tank podcast, and not having it immediately blown up by an FPS drone or a NLAW knockoff or a Javelin knockoff are just incredibly low. And so but at the same time, what China could do, and because what we're saying that the Houthis have done very successfully, is that maritime trade is based on insurance. Your ship can't leave port unless it's insured, and the insurance companies will not insure you if someone who can present a credible threat has said, we will, you've got to keep ships out of this area.
Which is why prices will be going up, boys and girls, by about 2. So be prepared for that. Everything is going to be, because there is so much trade going through that area of the world. The prices of pretty much everything will start going up because of the Houthis' interdiction of the Red Sea.
Personally, I'm just glad someone, even if it's the poorest people on earth in Yemen, are doing something.
South Africa.
Well, they haven't started. South Africa started lobbing missiles at Israeli flag shipping.
But the point being is they're actually taking the initiative in the International Justice Court.
Yeah. Now, for just in terms of Miltech nerdery, it's really interesting. There's been a lot of talk about the Houthis firing anti-ship ballistic missiles, which makes us think instantly of things like the Chinese DF-21. That what they are doing is taking old SA-2 flying telegraph poles, the Soviet anti-air missiles that used to knock down B-52s over Hanoi. And
Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Wait, I remember watching some things about 1,000 B-52s bombing Hanoi and surroundings. 1,000, the bastards.
Yeah. Anyway, SA-2 is kind of cool for this in that it's they call it the flying telegraph pole. It's a big missile, and it punches a hole in the sky up to 60,000 feet. And from there, if you just roll it over and give it some targeting information, and apparently the Houthis are just working off the ship tracking websites, because
Why wouldn't you?
a container ship is so huge.
And tell you what, boys and girls, it's not moving that fast.
Yeah. So they fire these things up to 60,000 feet and then bring them down like the finger of God. And, they're not hitting everything and they're getting intercepted a lot. But for a very cheap surplus munition, that they're calling them ballistic missiles. They're not actually going suborbital, so I'm a bit neffy on that.
Going up and coming down. So, it's not really ballistic. But anyway.
Yeah.
Let's move on from that fun news. Taiwan.
Presidential election day in Taiwan today, as we record, Rob.
Yep.
So you've got the KMT, who are the descendants of some of the worst people on earth, the Kuomintang.
Just remember, Taiwan was a military dictatorship up until 1996.
Yeah.
When they had their actual
point
first...
they said, "Oh no, we need to tell people we're a democracy, so they'll support us." And
So from 1949 to 1996, they were a military dictatorship
of the Kuomintang.
Yeah, of the Kuomintang, and so they have finally decided to be. So when everybody says, yes, they're a democracy of 25 million people, blah, 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 blah. You know what? Only for the last 30 years.
Yeah. And but the point is that the Kuomintang in this election are the ones saying, yeah, maybe we should talk to China. Maybe we all want to get rich together. And the opposition's like, let's go with America. They'll have our backs.
And then there's people saying, you know what? I just want cheaper housing. I'd like to be able to buy a house.
I'd like to be able to work a full-time job and be able to afford to buy the place that I live in and not be subject to the rapacious nature of landlords. Weird, Rob. I've never heard this before.
Where have those thoughts come from? I mean, it's so radical that the idea of being able to work a full-time job and be able to actually afford to live.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the Western world all over, boys and girls.
Yeah.
And getting more so as housing becomes commoditized and being bought up by Russian oligarchs
or BlackRock. It's a bit of a problem and an increasing one. Worth pointing out, yes, one of our commenters was pointing out that inflation in Russia is high, but the central bank's on that. But wages are rising. Wages are not rising here. That'd be nice. Regular followers of this, I don't know what the hell we are now, podcast show.
Podcast.
Yeah. Know that, my partner Sharon and I bought the house that we're recording in now. We moved in last year. But we both earn enormous salaries, way above the combined median, and we don't have kids. And it still took an enormous chunk of change from my parents to make buying any sort of house a possibility. It's nuts. It's broken. And
it's not like you're young, John.
No.
At 50, be able to get into the housing market.
Yeah,
with two good jobs.
But a friend of mine would say, you forget survivor's guilt. You guys are like the last helicopter out of Saigon hanging on to hanging onto the ladder. It's appalling that we treat everyone in our society these ways to make a very small number of people a little bit richer than they already are. But anyway, let's move on from the social commentary. Although it's funny, Rob, the more that people complain about us talking about politics in this Tank podcast,
they love it.
The more our listening numbers just go up.
They love
the
it.
More they love it. It's very Trumpy. They love it. They love it.
All right. Well, the tanks, you've got it up there. You put it there?
Yeah, I've started playing. Rob, are we going to start a what do they call them? Divisions?
Platoon.
Platoon.
You can't make a division and weld the tanks. All right. Well, I was on last night, and my mate Pete from down in Melbourne, he was not around, so I'm going to blame him. But yes, we'll make extra efforts. And
hang on, big news! We've had a comment from Facebook. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Rob.
We appreciate it. We were wondering if it was worth going to the effort of the multi-streaming. I would also say we're bumping much higher than we normally are for people watching live, so maybe it was worth it.
Thank you all very much for joining in. Now, so John's joined World of Tanks, and I'll drag him along and start trying to get him up to the idea of tier 3s, tier 4s type thing. And where are you up to with it, John?
I've got a couple of tier 5s.
Really? There you go. Got the Churchill 3 yet?
No, I'm playing the German line.
Okay, so
There's some tanks in that line. I'm literally, I run a tank podcast. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
the Panzer 5.4 is
No, this is the 3.4. I'm like, what the hell's a 3.4?
no, the Panzer 5.4 is the one because it's got about 300 more hit points and everything else. Anyway, for those who don't know, 2024 is seeing the shutdown of Google Podcasts, which is where
for our 12 listeners who use Google Podcasts, we're on everything else.
Where I listen to most of mine, and I listen to a lot. Google Podcasts is where it's at. They are being shut down. So creators and listeners are being forced / sent to YouTube Music, where I am assuming will be easier for Google to enforce intellectual property rights, print more money, and tell you what you should be doing with your life.
I have a funny story on this. I emailed Google using my creator access, which gives you very little, but it does give you someone to talk to, and said, when are you actually going to roll out YouTube Music podcasts in Australia? Because they'd had it in the US for a while, but not here. And I could see in the stats that we were pushing our podcasts out into this platform that I couldn't actually see myself, which was weird. And the funny thing was, I got a reply from them a few days later saying, oh, we can't tell you when this is going to happen. And it was the very day that it actually happened. They sent someone sent me an email saying that it's going to happen. We can't tell you when it's going to happen on the day that it was just like, oh, there it is. So well done, folks.
Now, just because I could,
one more beer.
Just because I could, I could not get a Chinese beer besides Tsingtao. I grabbed an Angkor beer. So this is Cambodian beer.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've had this one before, but
talk about the Cambodian tanks, Rob.
I think they're Soviet in nature and probably a lot of T-55s.
I do like that all the writing on this can is in Cambodian. So
established in 1992.
Yeah.
I went through some military academies with people who were over there during certain activities.
Peacekeeping.
After 1992. And they may or may not have run over people with APCs because they're getting shot at. There you go.
Now, I would say that, we're doing multi-streaming for the first time, and YouTube, which is where we built the audience, is the biggest. 15 listeners at this point in the podcast is more than we've ever had, so that's great. We've also got a couple on Twitter. We've got several on Facebook, and we've got one lonely person hanging out on Twitch. And I know that Twitch normally shows yourself as the viewer, but it's not in this case because of the way we're streaming it. So just wanted to say that. So Alexander Vlad has been trying to draw a T-99 in the snow with piss, but the front of the tank would be snowed over by the time he got to the back. That's some snow. That's how you know you're in a snowstorm, when you can't draw a T-99. What's a T-99? Oh, this is the Type 99. We're talking about it now. 99. Okay, yeah.
All right, so our Angkor beer
tastes exactly like the last one.
Very similar.
Unbelievably similar.
It's probably using the same water from the same river.
Unless it's been boiled.
Yeah. And we all know that the water quality is what gives a lot of beer its flavor. And as you said, a lot of it's in Cambodian, so we can't read a lot of it.
Look,
330 mils, 5% alcohol.
Let's just talk in general terms about beer. Beer is it's not like wine, where a truly great one you could export around the world like Bordeaux. Beer is best drunk close to the brewery that makes it. It doesn't age particularly well. It's very expensive to ship because it's
IPAs.
It's heavy. but we've talked about the history of IPAs before, but they're complicated and weird. So Alan's making a point about
Khmer Rouge. Yeah.
All right, Alan. I'm going to put you on screen, Alan.
Because nobody believes that. All right.
So yes, the Khmer Rouge were bad, and they killed a lot of people.
Bad people do bad things.
That does not invalidate other critiques of other systems.
And they're not socialists. They were just murderous buggers.
I did once have a fight with a moderately big person on the internet who described the Khmer Rouge as being right wing, and I'm like, no, you can accuse the right wing of all sorts of things. A lot of them bad.
They weren't even that. I mean,
the Khmer Rouge were not right wing. They were left. They were owned by the left wing.
It's not the same as the beer Saigon. It's different, harder aftertaste to it. A bit metallic to my thoughts as part of beer. So not as good as the beer Saigon special.
But I would just say in general, unless something is particularly cool and different, just buy from a brewery that's close to where you live. Is better for the brewery, better for the environment, and you will get better beer. Now it's not that hard to make good beer. I make really good beer all the time. It's quite easy. It's a case of whether you can afford to send it anywhere.
All right, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our episode on the Type 99 Red Wave.
The audience is the biggest it's been, Rob. We have to keep going. No, we don't. It's okay. We appreciate.
Enjoy your day. We love you all, and thank you very much for allowing us to keep talking to you about tanks and stuff and drinking beer and having a good time, because who wouldn't want to do this on a rainy, stormy Canberra day, Saturday afternoon?
Well, yeah, I mean, it does actually, you might have guessed it. This production of this episode is not quite as simple and beer chugging as it seems.
He does all the work.
Thank
you, John.
It's all a lot of fun. Oh, David has just said hi on the Facebook. Thanks, David. Good to see you. Thanks, folks. We've got a great tank for next month.
Now, so we could have said the Type 99 is in coming up for Lunar New Year, not Chinese, because other countries celebrate it.
Vietnamese
Lunar New Year, which is on February 8th. So we can say that, you know what? That's what the Type 99 is coming. So that's why we're doing it now. So for that one, because otherwise we're not going to be around on February 8th. But who knows what's coming next?
Raghav wants to know if it's Bob Semple, and I'm going to spill the beans, mate. No.
We've done it. We've done it.
We talked about the Bob Semple in the Sentinel episode. So we are going to there will be a silhouette of a tank coming up in a couple of weeks, and then sometime in February we will have a new tank. What you might have guessed is we do alternate between modern and older tanks,
and whatever I feel like pushing for. John has better ideas than these things.
Anywho, it's been awesome. We're at the 2-hour mark. We really appreciate everyone who's on the stream, and we also really appreciate everyone who's not on the stream but is listening on the podcast. So don't feel like you've been left behind.
And thank you to Clayton again.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Clayton.